Tonight, we enter a world of charm, shadows, and contradictions. A world where the smile was polished, the suits were perfect, but behind the velvet curtain lived a man far more complicated than Hollywood ever admitted. This is the story of Dean Martin, a man who seemed effortlessly cool, but carried secrets, heartbreak, and the heavy weight of a double life. Let's begin. Steubenville, Ohio, a place where the steel mills coughed smoke into the sky and the streets hummed with a rhythm equal parts danger and desperation. It wasn't a glamorous town, not even close. It was a place where men lived hard and boys grew up fast. Into this world, on June 7th, 1917, came a quiet, observant child named Dino Paul Crocetti. His parents, Gaetano and Angela, were Italian immigrants living paycheck to paycheck, barely keeping the house warm through the bitter Ohio winters. Italian was the only language spoken at home, so when Dino reached school age, English hit him like a brick wall. Teachers couldn't understand him. Kids teased him relentlessly for his accent, his shyness, his clothes, even his lunch. He wasn't loud enough, confident enough, American enough. So Dino did something most children never learn until adulthood. He became invisible. He sat in the back. He watched. He memorized the behaviors of the loudest boys, the strongest men, the ones nobody dared bully. He learned very young that silence was power. But Steubenville was no ordinary American town. Behind every barbershop and bakery lay a different reality. Hidden backrooms, smoky clubs, and quiet conversations that stopped when a stranger walked in. This was a town forged by steel and run by the underworld. By age 12, Dino knew all the unspoken rules. Who controlled which block, which back door was safe to enter, which men you never looked directly in the eyes. By 15, he wasn't just aware of the shadows. He was working in them. He boxed under the name Kid Crockett, fighting older boys for cash in makeshift rings where bets were thrown around like candy. He delivered packages for men who didn't ask questions and didn't appreciate questions being asked. He learned the art of reading danger and avoiding it. These weren't criminal activities, not in Steubenville. This was survival. This was the economy. And this was the culture that molded him. While other boys dreamed of baseball or cars, Dino dreamed of escape. Not riches, not fame, just escape. He didn't yet know he had a voice that could hypnotize a room. He didn't know destiny was pulling him away from steel smoke and secret deals. All he knew was this. To survive Steubenville, you needed three things: a cool head, a quiet tongue, and the ability to disappear when necessary. Dean Martin mastered all three before he was old enough to shave. This was the beginning of the king of cool. Before the spotlight, before Hollywood, before the world adored him, Steubenville taught him how to read a room, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to carry secrets without speaking a word. The man we later knew, smooth, collected, mysterious, wasn't built in Hollywood. He was forged right here, in the shadows of Steubenville. Before Dean was the suave crooner, he was a kid hauling sacks in a steel mill, until someone heard him humming and said, "Kid, you sound like a radio." He shrugged it off. But the truth? Dino had a gift, rich, smoky, and effortless. He joined local bands, singing at clubs owned by men whose names never appeared in newspapers. His first audiences were gamblers, tough men, and women who'd seen too much. They didn't clap unless they felt it. And they felt Dino. He changed his name to Dean Martin, something easier, smoother, and gradually, he built a reputation strong enough to travel beyond Steubenville. No PR team, no training, just charisma and a voice that melted rooms. Hollywood loves to talk about fate, but sometimes fate looks less like a lightning bolt and more like two opposites crashing into each other at the exact right moment. That's what happened in 1946, inside a New York nightclub buzzing with cigarette smoke and restless energy, when a smooth, unbothered crooner crossed paths with a wiry, desperate whirlwind named Jerry Lewis. Dean Martin was already building a quiet reputation. Not famous yet, but respected. The kind of act club owners whispered about.
He's got something.
Not sure what it is, but he's got it. Jerry Lewis, on the other hand, was pure chaos bottled in a young, hungry entertainer who hadn't yet learned how to sit still. He wanted attention, needed it like oxygen. They were both hustlers, both climbing, both shaped by hard childhoods. And when they stepped on the stage together, even without rehearsing, something electric happened. Jerry exploded with slapstick energy. Dean didn't even flinch. He just stood there, letting Jerry bounce off his calm like rubber hitting stone. The audience screamed, laughed, cried, and a partnership was born. It was chemistry you couldn't fake. Dean was the cool river. Jerry was the firestorm. Together, they created a tornado. Within months, nightclubs sold out. Hollywood agents called nonstop. People stood in line for hours just to see the duo. And both men realized they had stumbled onto something bigger than friendship, a phenomenon. But the truth behind the scenes wasn't as perfect as the posters. Jerry adored Dean, worshipped him, followed him, quoted him, shadowed him. He saw Dean as more than a partner. He saw him as a brother, a mentor, almost a lifeline. But Dean was older, more private, more complicated. He didn't like being chased. He didn't like clinging. And Hollywood, as always, made everything worse. Studio contracts pushed Jerry to the front. Press interviews framed Jerry as the genius. Headlines screamed, Lewis and Martin, and not Martin and Lewis. Dean's cool exterior began cracking, not in anger, but in quiet exhaustion. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He didn't throw tantrums. He simply withdrew, the same way he had survived Steubenville as a boy. Silence became his shield. Jerry's love turned into overwhelming pressure. The act that once felt effortless began suffocating both men. But here's the twist YouTube rarely mentions. Dean Martin wasn't jealous. He wasn't insecure. He wasn't overshadowed. He was done being a character he didn't control. He was tired of being the straight man, the cool guy standing still while Jerry climbed all over him. He wanted depth. He wanted movies. He wanted a career with his own name on it. The final crack came during a promotional tour. Dean told Jerry, quietly, without drama, "You're the star. I'm okay with that. But I can't be your shadow anymore." And just like that, the greatest comedy duo in America collapsed. Fans were heartbroken. Studios panicked. Jerry spiraled emotionally for years. Admitted he cried daily for a long time. Dean walked away with the same Steubenville calm he carried his whole life. No press statements. No outbursts. Just a man reclaiming his identity. What looked like a breakup was really a rebirth. Because the moment Dean left Jerry Lewis, he stepped directly into the era that would turn him into a legend. The king of cool wasn't born on a comedy stage. He was born the minute he walked off it. Dean reinvented himself with a smoothness nobody expected. Within years, he transformed from nightclub comic to Hollywood leading man, with grace, swagger, and mystery. The Rat Pack wasn't just entertainment. It was a political machine, a cultural force, a secret society of influence. Dean wasn't the loudest, but he was the center of gravity. Frank Sinatra admired him. Women adored him. Men envied him. This was also the era where whispers of payola, mob financing, and backroom deals floated through the industry. But here's what makes Dean different. He wasn't accused in major payola scandals. No major congressional testimony. No exposed bribes. No blacklist. And no YouTube deep dives ripping him apart. Why? Because Dean played the Hollywood game like a ghost. Present, powerful, but never traceable. He didn't bribe. He didn't beg. He didn't need to. He was invited everywhere. That was his real power. Hollywood loves tidy myths. They love the clean version of a man, the harmless smile, the funny stories, the polished nostalgia. But Dean Martin, there was nothing simple about him. For decades, Hollywood kept his image untouched. The charming crooner, the smooth comic, the man with a drink in one hand and a joke in the other. A perfect gentleman of the Rat Pack. But beneath the surface, there were shadows. Quiet controversies, whispers never confirmed, behaviors never questioned. Because Dean played the game differently than anyone else. Let's pull back the curtain. Dean Martin's most famous trademark was that drink in his hand. Whiskey glass, half smile, lazy swagger. People believed the act so deeply that audiences thought Dean was drunk on stage for 30 years straight. But here's the quiet truth insiders revealed. The glass was almost always apple juice. A prop, a shield, a mask. Why would a man pretend to drink? Because alcohol gave him an excuse to be distant, to avoid emotional intimacy, to dodge interviews, to stay guarded without seeming cold. It was a genius shield, one the public accepted without question. A man pretending to be drunk, to hide how deeply sober and controlled he truly was. Dean grew up in a town controlled by the underworld. Not full-on mafia involvement, but influence. A presence you didn't disrespect. As his fame grew, people whispered, Dean knows people. He's protected. He's connected. Was he? Not in the Hollywood rumor mill sense. There's no evidence Dean Martin was a criminal or working with criminal organizations. But here's what people don't want to admit. Dean Martin had earned respect from men who ran the clubs he started in. He never betrayed anyone. He never talked. He moved on clean. And those quiet relationships followed him into fame. It wasn't criminal. It was cultural. It was survival. And Hollywood? They stayed silent about it. Because even they didn't want to cross the lines Dean knew. The Rat Pack wasn't just entertainment. It was influence. They entertained presidents, shaped elections, swayed public opinion, moved in circles where few entertainers had the access or courage to walk. Frank Sinatra embraced that world fully. Political deals, endorsements, friendships with powerful figures. Dean Martin? He kept his distance. He didn't sign petitions. He didn't join protests.
He didn't speak on politics.
Some called him apathetic. Others said he was smart. Hollywood couldn't control a man who refused to be part of their political machine. And that made Dean dangerous. Because a celebrity who doesn't need the system can't be controlled. This is a detail YouTube rarely touches. Dean Martin navigated the most political era of Hollywood without ever being targeted or used. He survived the Red Scare. He survived the horrors. He survived the studio power wars. Because he stayed invisible in plain sight. The public thought Dean walked away because he was tired. But there was more. Jerry Lewis was being pushed by executives, agents, the press, all telling him he was the genius, the star, the future. Dean saw the writing on the wall. Hollywood wanted Jerry Lewis, not the duo. Dean quietly refused to be used as a stepping stone. Privately, he told friends he felt replaced before he was even gone. And here's the part no vintage documentary on YouTube ever mentions. Dean Martin didn't break up the act because of Jerry. He broke it up because of Hollywood. He hated being packaged, hated being controlled, hated being trapped in a caricature. He wasn't Jerry's shadow.
He wasn't the straight man.
He wasn't the sidekick. He was a leading man waiting to be unleashed. And when he left, he didn't fight for custody of the act. He didn't file lawsuits. He didn't negotiate. He simply walked. That silence was louder than any scandal. The industry never attacked him, never leaked stories, never exposed him. And that's simply because Dean Martin was one of the few stars who didn't beg for roles,
Didn't chase awards.
didn't need publicity, didn't fear being blacklisted, didn't owe the studio system anything, didn't drink, fight, cheat, or melt down in public. You cannot destroy a man who refuses to give the world a version of himself they can weaponize. Dean Martin's biggest controversy was that he had no controversy. That made him unpredictable, and Hollywood feared unpredictability more than scandal. He was a ghost in a world built on exposure, a private man in a public machine, a king who walked without a kingdom needing to bow. Loss changes a man, and Dean Martin, the king of cool, was hit hard when his son, Dean Paul Martin, died in a military jet crash in 1987. That tragedy broke something in him that never healed. He withdrew. He moved quietly. He stopped caring about fame, Hollywood, audiences, or the Rat Pack legacy. On Christmas Day, 1995, Dean Martin passed away in Beverly Hills. The official cause: respiratory failure due to emphysema. But spiritually, the world lost him long before that. Behind the sunglasses and smooth smile had always been a man protecting himself from pain. A man who survived a violent town, a brutal industry, and a fame machine that consumed everyone except him. He left as quietly as he lived. No drama, no scandal, just a legend fading into the night. Tonight, we walked through shadows and stardom, through secrets and charm, through the life of a man who controlled his destiny with silence, style, and a smile. This was Dean Martin, a mystery, a survivor, the king of cool who never needed a crown. Subscribe to Spooky Events, where history always has a darker side.